Hey guys, welcome back to Rebel Media. We're going to be doing a short history on William T. Anderson, otherwise known as Bloody Bill. He's a controversial dude. I'm just trying to tell a story. There's a lot of different stories on him. I've tried to do a lot of research on this and hope you guys enjoy it.
If you proclaim to be against me or my men, I will kill you. I will hunt you down like wolves and murder you. You cannot escape.
Some simple advice to the citizens of Missouri from Bill Anderson, aka Bloody Bill. William T. Anderson was one of the most notorious Confederate guerrillas during the war between the states. He fought Unionists in the midst of the war in Missouri and Kansas. He was a leading figure in the infamous Lawrence Massacre and the Centralia Massacre, gaining the nickname Bloody Bill for the perceived savagery of his exploits. Just like Confederate fighter William Clark Quantrell, Jesse James, his brother Frank, and many others that made their mark in outlaw gunslinging rebel history, Bloody Bill made his. Post-war histories cast Anderson as either a sadistic murderer or a dashing Confederate cavalier. He's been heavily mythologized. Anderson has been featured in a variety of popular culture media, including the character from the film The Outlaw Josie Wells. There is no doubt he was a badass dude, but he was also a very violent and dangerous man who feared no man alive. Anderson was born sometime between 1837 and 1839 in Hopkins County, Kentucky, to a William C. and Martha Anderson, and he was one of 7 children. His family moved to Huntsville, Missouri as a child, and in 1857 the Andersons moved again to Kansas and settled near Council Grove. His father was a farmer and a hat maker, but many think the family had a side business of horse thievery. Bill and his brothers got into shootouts with Indians in Kansas growing up, and his family never owned any slaves. In June of 1860, Bill's mom, Martha Anderson, died in a freak accident where she was struck by lightning. It was also at this time, allegedly, that one of Bill's brothers was killed by a Native American. In late 1861, he and a family friend and a local judge named Baker attempted to join the Confederate Army, but they were attacked by the 6th Kansas Cavalry in Vernon County, Missouri, and after being captured, Baker distanced himself from the Anderson family, issuing a warrant for the arrest of William's brother, Griffith. When Bill's dad sought to have the warrant suspended, a quarrel ensued in which Baker shot and killed the Anderson patriarch. Another report says that Kansas Jayhawkers came to the house and hung his dad. Whichever account you believe to be true, Bill's dad was murdered. On July 2nd, 1862, Bill Anderson murdered Baker and burned his house to the ground and fled to Missouri. Some say that he shot him and then set the house on fire, and others say that he shot at him and missed, and Baker hid in the basement, and once he knew the house was ablaze and he wasn't going to live, he took his own life. One thing is for sure, the house was burned and he died inside. So meanwhile, back on the home front, Anderson's sisters and a bunch of other women are rounded up by this dude, Thomas Ewing Jr. He was a Union general, and they get thrown in prison for being Confederate spies. After arresting and confining a number of suspected female spies to a makeshift jail in Kansas City, the building collapsed, allegedly because Union troops were moving a post to make room for more prisoners. The collapse killed Anderson's 14-year-old sister, and Bill's 10-year-old sister Martha had her legs crushed and she was crippled for life, while his 16-year-old sister Molly suffered serious back injuries and facial lacerations. Both girls would carry their battered bodies and emotional scars for years to come. Cole Younger's cousin was also killed in the collapse. Now Quantrell and Bill, they think the collapse is intentional, and at this point, after all Bill's been through, it sets him on fire, and he's never the same again. Bloody Bill joins Quantrell's Raiders, guerrilla soldiers who fight for the Southern cause and are better known as bushwhackers. These men are not officially affiliated with the Confederate Army. They include Archie Clement, age 17, Frank James, Jesse James, Cole Younger, and even a few African American members. That's right. Most famously, a man named James Nolan, a black Confederate and one of Quantrell's most trusted scouts. Nolan was one of 5 known African Americans who rode with the Bushwhackers, fellow soldiers, not slaves. There is a movie called Run with the Devil that crudely shows this unique dynamic in American history. The Lawrence Massacre happened August 21, 1863. Quantrell's raid on Lawrence was in revenge for the prison collapse and also an attack on Osceola, where a man named James Lane, nicknamed the Grim Chieftain, and his fellow Jayhawkers, also known as Redlegs, sacked the pro-Confederate town, looting and pillaging and burning all but 3 buildings to the ground. Lane also ordered the execution of 9 civilians. All of this I know to be true. I have also read reports of additional murders and rapes of civilians, but I cannot fully confirm or deny these accounts. Lawrence was a defining moment in the border conflict. Quantrell, about 400 guerrillas, Bloody Bill, they all head into town, and shit goes down. At dawn, August 21, 1863, Quantrell, Bill, and the other guerrillas, about 400 of them, rode into town and killed between 160 and 190 men and boys. They ransacked homes, they shot civilians, they looted stores, and set fire to buildings, but they didn't harm any women or girls. They caused between $1 million and $1.5 million worth of damage in 1863 dollars, and approximately 20% of the male population of the town had been killed, leaving 85 widows. After the massacre, General Ewing issued General Order No. 11, which affected all rural residents regardless of their allegiance, though if they could prove their loyalty to the Union, they were permitted to stay in the affected area. But they had to leave their farms and move to communities near military camps. Those who could not had to vacate the area altogether or worse. It was meant to put a stop to the civilians in aiding the bushwhackers, but it backfired. Guerrillas were given greater support and more access to supplies than before. Shortly after the raid, Quantrell and Bill go their separate ways. They have a falling out, and Bill starts his own band of raiders. On his squad, he's got Jesse James, Frank James, he's got David Poole, little Archie Clements. They all get together and they run with Bill, and they obviously all become famous outlaws later on. Early one morning, on September 27, 1864, Bloody Bill and about 80 of his men go into the town of Centralia, some of them wearing stolen Union Army uniforms, and they start drinking stolen whiskey and looting the town. Anderson's men go to work cutting telegraph lines and striking at the supply lines, but a Union patrol catches up with 7 of Anderson's men. They kill them and scalp them. The guerrillas swear revenge, and they take it. Anderson and his men saw an approaching train and they blocked the line. The engineer failed to realize there was danger since most of the men he saw were wearing blue Yankee uniforms, but it was too late. Anderson's men overtook the train, and the 125 passengers were divided between civilians and soldiers. The civilians were robbed and released. However, 23 Union soldiers who were on leave after leaving the Battle of Atlanta were not so lucky. They were separated and ordered off the train and told to take off their uniforms. Bill made a short speech.
I will show you that I can kill men with as much skill and rapidity as anyone. From this time on, I ask no quarter, and I shall give none. You are all to be killed and sent to hell.
After that, all the Union prisoners were killed and scalped, except for one, a man by the name of Sergeant Thomas Goodman, who later escaped 10 days later and is known to be the only prisoner that Bill ever took. The train was set on fire and set down the track. Many suspect this is also the moment with Jesse James, who was in attendance, got the notion to start being a train robber. 155 Union soldiers led by Major A.V.E. Johnston were in pursuit of Anderson and his 80 men, which was supposed to be a swift retribution for the Centralia Massacre that had happened earlier that very same day. There are different stories on how it began. Some say Johnston and his men were led into a trap by the bushwhackers by using a small group to be chased into an ambush with the larger one. Other reports say a challenge was made by Johnston. Either way, by the end of it, only 32 men survived. Their single-shot rifles were no match for the guerrillas' superior Missouri horsemanship, and their multiple revolvers, usually around 3 to 6 that they carried on their person. The bodies were scalped, mutilated, including decapitation by placing heads with different bodies, and even castration. October 26, 1864, Bill's reign of terror comes to an end. A special gang unit is put together to track down Bill Anderson under Colonel Samuel P. Cox. They sneak up on his camp of 150 men, and the most agreed upon theory is that they used a small band of Union patrol troops to lure them out into a trap, using their own techniques against them. The Federals had twice the numbers, and as usual, the stories with Bloody Bill, there are different accounts and different versions, but here's the one that made the most sense to me. Bill led a final charge that many historians see as a suicide mission. All but 2 men were stopped at 100 yards from the Yankee line. The men who broke through? A man named James Raines, and of course, Bloody Bill himself. The breach was short-lived. Anderson was shot in the head and died instantly. Some say Raines survived, but I have not been able to confirm this. I've also read that he was shot as well. It's said that Bill's gray mare was adorned with Union scalps, and on his person was a letter from his wife with locks of hair belonging to her and their child, $600 in gold and greenbacks, $15 in Confederate script, a small Confederate flag presented to him by a friend, and a written order addressed to Captain Anderson. There was also a silk cord to which Bill was said to add a knot for every man he killed with his own hands. The cord had 53 knots. If you ask me, I think it was more than 53. Cox's soldier cut off Bloody Bill's finger to steal his wedding ring, and then they brought the body to town. They put Bill's body on display in Richmond, Missouri, and hundreds of people lined up to see it. The local dentist, who doubled as the town photographer, was summoned to take 2 pictures of Anderson's corpse propped up in a chair. Both photos show that his left finger has been cut off. After the photo op, they chopped off his head, stuck it on a telegraph pole, and the rest of the body was dragged through the streets. The remains were eventually gathered and placed in a shallow grave. Jayhawkers later became enraged when they saw his grave in Richmond covered in flowers. Never having the nerve to face him in person, they destroyed what they could with their horses and finished by urinating on what was left. After a local request, the U.S. government provided a new headstone for Anderson in 1969. Cox became a Union hero, and Anderson's death later became the motivation for Jesse James' 1869 bank robbery in Gatlin, Missouri, in which he mistakenly shot someone who he believed to be Cox. Hey guys, thank you again for being here and watching my video. I really do appreciate it. If you could leave me a comment, let me know what you thought, and we'll see you guys next time.